Hey everyone, I'm back reading Amelia Bedelia, Chapter 2. During the announcements, Mrs. Shock had been busy writing on the board. After the applause for pizza died down, she pointed at what she had written and asked, "Has anyone seen these letters around the school?" MCMXX. "Is this another language or English?" asked Pat. "That doesn't look like an English word to me." "You're right," said Mrs. Shock. "It's Latin." "Like they speak in Latin America?" said Heather. "No, Spanish, Portuguese, and other languages are spoken in Latin America. This is Latin like they spoke in ancient Rome," said Mrs. Shock. "Today, Latin is a dead language." "Is that what zombies speak?" asked Pat. "Zombies don't speak. That's why they are zombies," said Penny. "These letters stand for numbers called Roman numerals," said Mrs. Shock. Clay was nodding at Amelia Bedelia. She could tell what he was thinking, that Mrs. Roman was so important she even had her own numbers. "You people walk right by these letters twice a day," said Mrs. Shock. Joy raised her hand. I know," she said. "They're carved on the stone near the front door." "That's right. You're very observant, Joy," said Mrs. Shock. "The letters were carved into a stone block called the cornerstone. The cornerstone was the first thing the builders who built our school put in place. All of the other stone blocks and bricks were built after it." "Is it like when people put letters and numbers on license plates to spell out a joke?" asked Angel. "Like LA10SEZ, said Clay. "Yeah," said Cliff. "Latin is easy." "You guys, ENFSENF, said Mrs. Shock. They thought about that for a second, then they nodded. "Okay," said Cliff. "I see," said Clay. "CDB, said Joy. NQ, said Mrs. Shock. The builder carved those Roman numerals to record the year the building was built. "What year was MCMXX? asked Heather. "Reading Roman numerals is like breaking a code," said Mrs. Shock. "So the letters are numbers and the numbers are letters?" asked Amelia Bedelia. "Exactly, Amelia Bedelia," said Mrs. Shock. The letter M stands for the number 1000. The letter X is 10. Now, what if you have two M's and two X's? "That's 2000 plus 20, said Dawn. "That's this year, 2020, said Rose. "That's right," said Mrs. Shock. "The year 2020 is written MMXX in Roman numerals." "But our cornerstone has had a C between the two M's, said Joy. Wow, thought Amelia Bedelia. Mrs. Shock was right about Joy. She definitely saw things that most people didn't notice. "Good point," said Mrs. Shock. "Well, the letter C comes from the Latin word cent, which means 100. That's where we get the word century, which means 100 years. And a cent is 1/100th of a dollar." "Our class has our very own cent," said Amelia Bedelia. "Her name is Penny." Amelia Bedelia grabbed Penny by the wrist, pulling her to her feet to take a bow. "The rule with Roman numerals is that putting a letter in front of the other one subtracts that amount," said Mrs. Shock. "So putting a C in front of an M subtracts 100 from the 1000. "That makes 900, said Joy. "The first M is 1000, the second is 900. So the year is 1900 plus 20 makes it 1920. And you write it MCMXX. "And that is why we are having a centennial celebration," said Mrs. Shock. "A centennial is a celebration that happens every 100 years, said Heather. "My great-grandmother just had hers." "Centennial comes from Latin too," said Mrs. Shock. "For a dead language, Latin sure keeps popping up," said Amelia Bedelia. "Latin must be a zombie language," said Cliff. "It refuses to die." "Why didn't the ancient Romans just use regular numbers?" asked Chip. "I think Roman numerals look older and more important," said Holly. "Expensive watches use Roman numerals," said Mrs. Shock. "Some people think it makes them look more elegant." "Roman numerals are fun," said Clay. "If I give you a quiz on them, would you get 100%? asked Mrs. Shock. "Yep, because percent is Latin," said Clay. Amelia Bedelia was raising her hand to ask about percentages when the voice of doom came over the intercom. "Mrs. Shock, I still need an attendance report from you," said Mrs. Roman. Amelia Bedelia froze with her hand still up in the air. Even Mrs. Shock was so startled that she jumped. "Oh, thanks for volunteering, Amelia Bedelia," said Mrs. Shock, writing down the attendance number on a slip of paper and handing it to Amelia Bedelia. "Let's see if Mrs. Roman lives up to her name." Amelia Bedelia shrugged. She hadn't meant to volunteer, but it was always fun to be sent on a mission during class. When she passed Clay on the way out, he caught her arm and whispered, "You lucky duck. Just remember, Mrs. Roman probably invented those numbers, so stay on her good side." "Quack," said Amelia Bedelia with a laugh. The end.